During the Infection 19 pandemic, I introduced my wife to Final Fantasy XIV as a means for her to have fun and socialize with others online. 3 months ago, I found out she was cheating on me. I got a hold of their private chat messages, both in-game and on Discord. It felt like my world fell apart. Heartbroken doesn't even begin to describe my pain. She pleaded to rebuild our marriage and promised me that her affair ended in 2021. She assured me it was only an emotional connection and that she would never act on it. My wife was also dealing with drugs and alcohol addiction, and our 15-year-old dog dying, which affected her decision-making. She met him through their guild, and he is 10 years older than her. They quickly became friends, playing the game day and night, often staying up past midnight. Over time, she started feeling emotionally connected to him. They got married in the game and began engaging in descriptive erotic role-playing. She admitted that she initiated the first move to make their relationship more personal, moving their chats from in-game to more personal conversations on Discord. They talked about their daily activities and passions outside of the game, similar to dating. She shared her real name and personal email address with him. She claims they did not exchange phone numbers. Their erotic role-playing evolved from playing as game characters to more personal role-playing as themselves. She shared her personal fantasies. She never shared them with me, confided in him about our marriage issues, revealed personal secrets, and exchanged personal photos. She can't recall if she sent any unclothed photos, but some showed a lot of skin because she was in great shape at the time. The most painful part was them calling each other husband and wife and talking about what they'd do to each other if they met in real life. She confessed to having deep feelings of love for him, daydreaming about being close to him physically, and often imagining meeting him in person. What hurt even more was discovering that she often secretly messaged him while we were in bed together. She even messaged him while we were spending time together as a family. To make matters worse, I found out she had been erotic role-playing with 4 other guys. The last one in March 2023. Although it wasn't as personal as it was with the first guy, their chats were still very intimacy. Initially, she concealed critical details about the affair, unsuccessfully tried to delete messages from other men, and was overly secretive. She only confesses when she's left with no choice, fighting against revealing the truth until the very end. I uncovered most of the details about the affair myself, and getting her to confess took a lot of hard work. For some background, my wife and I have been together for 19 years and have 3 wonderful kids. We've been together since high school. From the beginning, we've loved each other deeply and passionately, and have never been apart. Our early years were magical, full of love and excitement. We shared common interests like taste in music, movies, nature, gaming, love for other cultures, dreams of traveling and starting a family. My wife is an amazing mother and wife. She is incredibly loving, profoundly empathetic, highly intelligent, and never fails to make me laugh. Unfortunately, after our children were born, my wife struggled with postpartum depression and has continued to deal with depression for many years. She also carries guilt from 2 baby unalivings due to our financial situation at the time. During her battle with depression, I was coping with anger management problems and what I thought was severe depression. Despite seeing many doctors and trying different antidepressants, nothing worked for me. I felt like a robot, moving through each day without emotional connection or feelings. With much regret and guilt, I confess that I haven't provided the support she needed and didn't act as the caring husband I should have been. We fought frequently, and I was verbally abusive, constantly shouting and condescending. I failed to help with housework, assist with the children, or be there for her emotional needs. My wife and children walked on eggshells around me. My demanding job took up so much of my time and energy that I failed to make her feel loved, cherished, or appreciated. Despite our marriage falling apart, my wife chose to stay with me, even though she had every opportunity to leave. I started seeing a new doctor who was empathetic and very understanding of my situation. This doctor looked into my condition more thoroughly, thinking the real reason for my symptoms wasn't the medications, but something deeper inside my body. After several blood tests, I discovered that I had low testosterone and hormonal imbalances for many years, probably since my late teens. It's a relief to finally understand why I've been feeling this way. After the 6th week of testosterone replacement therapy, I noticed an incredible rejuvenation. I started feeling like my 18-year-old self again. My energy was at its peak. I began exercising and lifting weights again, and my brain fog vanished. My overall mood improved a lot. For the first time, I felt like I finally had control over my emotions. Unfortunately, just as I was beginning to feel hopeful about the positive changes in my life, that was when I discovered her affair. I chose to forgive my wife and rebuild our relationship because she stood by me through all the tough times, no matter how difficult it was to live with me. Before my testosterone therapy, she suffered from years of neglect and mistreatment from me. Breaking up with her now that I'm feeling better would be unfair. I believe she wouldn't have felt the need to cheat if I had been more emotionally connected, attentive, and loving. I began working immediately on reconnecting with my wife and building a stronger foundation. I wrote her several heartfelt letters, something I haven't done since we were teenagers, to express my deep love for her and apologize for neglecting her. We both acknowledged our main problem is communication and always being overly cautious about each other's feelings. I broke down in tears in front of her and our children, thanking her for not leaving me and for not giving up on me. This was the first time I ever cried in front of my wife and children. I have fallen in love with her all over again, and I feel more emotionally attached to her than I ever have since we were teens. I've started regularly doing chores at home, helping her with her studies, and spending more time with the kids. We are both reigniting our love for each other and finally communicating. Our intimacy life has greatly improved and become more fun because we started living out her fantasies. Thanks to the energy boost from my testosterone replacement therapy, we have been having intimacy almost every day, sometimes even 2, 3 times a day. Before this, we were lucky to be intimate more than once a week. It has brought us closer together and added new excitement to our relationship. She even said she hasn't felt this in love with me since we were teenagers. To add, even though I've wholeheartedly forgiven my wife for her affair, I can't stop thinking about it. It's always on my mind, whether I'm working or relaxing. I think about it constantly, maybe 100 times a day. I have frequent panic attacks and vivid nightmares where I see them being together. It feels exhausting. Plus, I'm also filled with regret for how badly I treated her years before I got help. I feel guilty all the time and keep replaying how I mentally abused her. I cry nearly every day and struggle to eat or drink thinking about it. It's really draining me mentally. I'm also having major trust issues. I hope to repair our relationship and maintain our family unity. But there's a part of me that wants to leave due to her ongoing dishonesty and holding on to the secrecy, despite the many chances she's had to come clean. Despite this, I believe she is making a real effort to change. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. There's a lot of codependency here. I'm a gamer with a gamer wife. We both play MMOs. We've been together since we were teenagers, like you. If I found out she was cheating on me in an online game, it would be extremely hard to separate myself from her after so many years. But I'd do it. You've known each other most of your lives, and throughout everything you've written, you've admitted to treating her very poorly, leading her to find affection somewhere else. This isn't something you can hand-wave away. You both need a marriage counselor that deals with enmeshment/codependency if you decide to stay. But you have to understand that that little thought of "she cheated on me" will turn to resentment down the line. Comment 2. 3 months does not feel like nearly enough time to forgive someone for an affair. It certainly isn't enough time to stop thinking about it regularly. The fact that your anger is all mixed up with your guilt over mistreating her and your kids tells me that this is definitely going to require some professional help to navigate. There is a lot of complicated history here, and if you truly want to save your marriage, I think it's time to bring in a good marital counselor to mediate. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this journey. 2 weeks ago, I decided to take a huge risk that could either make or break everything. I suggested to my wife that we should go on a couples retreat. It was a last-minute decision, and honestly, I wasn't sure if it was the right move. The retreat was designed to help couples reconnect and work through their issues, but it was also expensive and required us to take time off work and arrange for someone to watch the kids. Despite the uncertainties, we both agreed to give it a shot. The first few days were rough. We were surrounded by other couples who seemed to have their own sets of problems, and it was overwhelming to hear their stories while dealing with our own. During one of the group sessions, my wife broke down and confessed that she still felt guilty about her emotional affair and the other men she had been involved with. She admitted that she was scared I would never fully trust her again, and that fear was eating her up inside. Hearing her say that out loud in front of strangers was both heartbreaking and eye-opening. One of the exercises at the retreat involved writing letters to each other, something we had started doing at home, but in a more structured environment. My wife wrote about her struggles with addiction and how it clouded her judgment. She also opened up about her postpartum depression and how she felt isolated and unsupported during those years. Reading her letter made me realize just how much pain she had been carrying, and it helped me understand her actions a bit more. We also had one-on-one sessions with a therapist who specialized in infidelity and addiction. These sessions were intense and brought up a lot of buried emotions. My wife admitted that she had been using the game and the online relationships as a way to escape from her reality. She said that the attention and affection she received from those men made her feel valued and desired, something she felt was missing in our marriage. It was hard to hear, but it made sense. During one of our private sessions, the therapist suggested that we create a trust jar. Every time we did something that helped rebuild trust, we would write it down and put it in the jar. It seemed like a small gesture, but it gave us a tangible way to see our progress. We started filling the jar with little notes about honest conversations, moments of vulnerability, and acts of kindness. It became a symbol of our commitment to each other and our relationship. One of the most challenging parts of the retreat was a role-playing exercise, where we had to act out scenarios that triggered our insecurities. My wife had to pretend to receive a message from one of her online friends, while I had to react in a way that expressed my feelings without anger or accusations. It was incredibly difficult, but it forced us to communicate more openly and honestly. We both realized that our reactions were often fueled by fear and insecurity rather than the actual situation. The retreat also included activities designed to help us reconnect on a physical and emotional level. We went on nature walks, participated in trust-building exercises, and even had a couples massage. These activities reminded us of the early days of our relationship, when we used to do things together just for fun. It helped us see each other in a different light and rekindled some of the old feelings we had for each other. One night, we had a long conversation about our future and what we wanted for our family. My wife admitted that she was terrified of losing me and that she was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. I told her about my ongoing struggles with trust and how I still had nightmares and panic attacks. We both agreed that we needed to continue therapy and work on our issues, but we also acknowledged that we were in this together. The retreat ended with a ceremony where each couple made a commitment to each other. We wrote our vows on a piece of paper and read them out loud in front of the group. My wife promised to be more transparent and to seek help for her addiction. I promised to be more supportive and to work on my anger issues. It was a powerful moment, and it felt like a fresh start for us. When we got back home, we continued with the practices we learned at the retreat. We kept filling the trust jar, attended therapy sessions, and made an effort to spend quality time together. I also started seeing a therapist on my own to deal with my trust issues and the guilt I felt for how I had treated her in the past. It wasn't easy, but we were making progress. One of the most significant changes was how we communicated. We started having regular check-ins where we would talk about our feelings and any concerns we had. These conversations were often difficult, but they helped us understand each other better and prevented misunderstandings from escalating into bigger issues. We also made a point to celebrate our small victories. Whether it was a week without a panic attack or a day where we both felt connected and happy, we acknowledged and celebrated those moments. It helped us stay positive and focused on our progress rather than our setbacks. Looking back, the decision to go on the retreat was a turning point for us. It forced us to confront our issues head-on and gave us the tools we needed to rebuild our relationship. We're not out of the woods yet, but we're on the right path. The trust jar is slowly filling up, and each note is a reminder of how far we've come. Thanks for reading. Aita for choosing my career over my controlling boyfriend's ultimatum. I have been dating my boyfriend for 3 years. We've had our ups and downs. In the beginning of the relationship, I tried to break it off for various reasons. But ultimately, he told me I could have no male friends and found out I was still in touch with some of them. I was then forced to block everyone he didn't think he'd like. Friends from home, college, local, but he had never met any of them. This included a man who I dated for less than a month before we decided we were better friends. And he was my best friend without incident or advance for 2 years after that month of dating. He will go through my phone and make sure I'm not talking to anyone. I had an old coworker text me recently as a check-in. Very professional, just a check-in, how's life, how's your new job, etc. And the conversation was a span of maybe 5 texts. I told him, and he said, I have to tell him everything whenever anyone reached out to me for any reason, even if I deemed it harmless. He says all men think about is intimacy, and answering gives them an idea that the door may be cracked. I'm also not allowed to go to clubs or bars with the girls without him, because it's not appropriate. I work at a pretty prestigious job, and I make the majority of the income. He owns a business that does pretty well, and he is generous with what he has. But I don't like that a lot of the expenses fall on me. I know he wants to do more. I want to be a stay-at-home mom one day, and I know that puts a lot of pressure on him. He says he wants that too, but we just don't know what the future holds financially, which worries me. I am currently saving aggressively to purchase a house for us, and I am the sole contributor to the account. He does a great job showing me he cares. We live together, and the house we rent is always taken care of. I come home frequently to gifts or flowers, and he takes me out and treats me well. I enjoy being with him and living together. I wish he was a little more goofy and open. Sometimes it feels like I'm talking to a wall, which is disappointing to me. I don't like to compare, but I find myself in my mind thinking about a previous boyfriend and how we would just talk and laugh for hours on end. I get myself out of that thought process by reminding myself I was younger then, and we didn't have as many responsibilities, so it was easier to be goofy. We went together to buy a ring recently. I'm wondering if I'm having the natural cold feet reaction or if something is really wrong that I need to address. Are these red flags or normal jitters? Can someone tell me how they have had success in a relationship with boundaries like this? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Just look at this post. You write 3 negative paragraphs. First, he's controlling. Second, he's kind of not secure financially. Third, he's a wall. And only 1 short positive paragraph. The controlling aspect is probably the biggest red flag out of all. Probably you won't be super miserable in the relationship, but you also won't be happy. At the moment you settle, you don't really love him. Do you want to live like this for the rest of your life? Plus, relationships generally don't get any easier. Comment 2. If you end up being a stay-at-home mom, SAHM, to his kids, you're going to be isolated from everyone. You can't have male friends, but also can't go out with your girlfriends. And you better believe he isn't going to go hang out with them just so you can too. He's going to be too tired keeping a roof over your head. You'll have no job, no friends, and depend only on him, completely under his control. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me. So, 2 weeks ago I decided to take a step back and really think about everything. I was feeling overwhelmed by all the rules and restrictions my boyfriend had set, and I needed some space to clear my head. I told him I was going to visit my parents for a few days, which he reluctantly agreed to. While I was there, I had a lot of time to reflect on our relationship and what I wanted for my future. During my stay, I reconnected with an old friend from high school, a girl named Sarah. We hadn't talked in years, but it felt like no time had passed at all. We spent hours catching up, and I realized how much I missed having friends who knew me before my relationship. Sarah reminded me of who I used to be, carefree, confident, and independent. It was a stark contrast to how I felt now, constantly walking on eggshells around my boyfriend. When I returned home, I decided to have a serious conversation with him about my feelings. I told him I needed more freedom and trust in our relationship. He seemed to understand at first, but then things took a turn for the worse. He accused me of cheating on him with Sarah, even though I had been completely honest about my time with her. He demanded to see my phone again, and when I refused, he became furious. In a moment of frustration, I made a mistake that changed everything. I told him I was done with his controlling behavior and that I needed a break. I didn't mean it as a breakup, but he took it that way. He stormed out of the house, and I didn't hear from him for days. I was left feeling confused and guilty, wondering if I'd overreacted. A few days later, I received a call from his business partner, who informed me that my boyfriend had been neglecting his work, and their business was suffering as a result. He asked if I knew what was going on, and I had to admit that I didn't. It was then that I realized the full extent of the impact our relationship was having on both of our lives. I tried reaching out to him, but he ignored my calls and texts. I even went to his office, but he wasn't there. I felt helpless and didn't know what to do. In the meantime, I continued to focus on my job and saving for the house, but it was hard to stay motivated with everything going on. One evening, I came home to find him waiting for me. He looked exhausted and defeated. He apologized for his behavior and admitted that he had been struggling with his own insecurities. He said he wanted to make things right and asked if we could start over. I was torn between wanting to believe him and fearing that nothing would change. We decided to give it another try, but things were different this time. He was more attentive and tried to be more open with me, but the trust issues were still there. I found myself constantly second-guessing his intentions and wondering if he was truly capable of changing. It was exhausting, and I started to feel like I was losing myself in the process. One night, we had a huge argument about our future. I told him I couldn't see myself being a stay-at-home mom if it meant living under his constant scrutiny. He accused me of not being committed to our relationship and said I was being selfish. It was then that I realized we were on completely different pages when it came to our future. In the midst of all this, I received a promotion at work. It was a huge opportunity, but it required me to relocate to another city. I was excited about the prospect of a fresh start, but I knew it would mean leaving him behind. I told him about the promotion, and he was furious. He accused me of abandoning him and said I was choosing my career over our relationship. I tried to explain that it wasn't about choosing one over the other, but about finding a balance that worked for both of us. He didn't see it that way and gave me an ultimatum: stay and work on our relationship or take the promotion and end things for good. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make, but I knew I couldn't continue living under his control. I took the promotion and moved to the new city. It was a bittersweet moment, leaving behind the life we had built together, but I knew it was the right choice for me. The first few weeks were tough, adjusting to a new job and a new city without him. I missed him, but I also felt a sense of relief and freedom that I hadn't felt in years. In the end, I realized that our relationship was built on a foundation of control and insecurity, and it wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. I needed to focus on myself and my own happiness, and I couldn't do that while constantly trying to appease him. It was a harsh reality, but one that I had to face in order to move forward. Thank you for reading. Aita for staying with my lying husband who drinks and breaks promises. My husband, 42-year-old male, has a history of lying to me, especially surrounding drinking, going out to bars, staying out all hours of the day and night, not answering the phone, or being honest about any of it. We've been together for 10 years, but it became really bad after the birth of our daughter in 2021. He really struggled with the transition to parenthood. We worked all of this out in couples therapy, and for the most part, we've been really happy since, and rebuilt the trust that was broken. Lately, I've noticed a lot of erratic behavior, hardly sleeping, lots of energy, overly positive, buying me presents, etc. And to be completely honest, it freaks me out. He is normally a heavy sleeper and really struggles with completing tasks due to his attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This behavior in itself has me waiting for the other shoe to drop. Well, the other shoe dropped last night and this morning. Last week, he asked me to go to a concert with his friends, who historically are the companions to the deceitful behavior. I said okay, and he said on his own, "I understand that I need to build your trust in me. I will work a half day, second shift, so leave at 6:30, have 2 beers, and be home by 11:30. 11:30 last night came, and I hadn't heard anything. Also, around 6:30, he said he was heading downtown, but didn't specify that he was leaving work. This morning, it was clear he was hungover. I asked him how much he drank last night, and he said he had 2 beers at the venue. I kept asking what else he had, and he wouldn't say. Finally, he said, "You want to know? I didn't go to work and went out with Ryan all day until the concert. I drank all day. You treat me like a freaking slave, frick you. God is telling me you treat me like a slave." There's a lot more to the conversation, but I am freaking heartbroken. He planned this all week, lied to me, did the one thing he knew would hurt me, and is trying to make me feel like I am the problem. I understand my anxiety around his drinking makes him feel constricted, but he's done stuff like this time and time again. The worst part is that he texted me and said, "I'm home now and here for you if you need to talk. I can't wait for our date later. Like, everything is fine. It is not fine, and I am not okay." What do I do? Am I overreacting? It's at the point with his behavior I don't feel comfortable sharing with any of my trusted friends' family because it's embarrassing. I can't talk to my therapist until Monday, so here I am. Please help. Thank you if you read all of this. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. This man is unsafe. You're underreacting. God is one step from telling him to harm you. Pick up the kids, get the frick out, call a lawyer, get advice from a domestic violence organization. Consider protective steps. Tell your family what is happening, please. This is how you get family annihilators. He's saying the kind of things that men say before they unalive everyone. Don't roll those dice. Substance abuse and delusions of grandeur God talk means you and the kids are in danger. Comment 2. God is telling me is psychotic talk. You can't trust him, and he certainly doesn't have your back. He isn't going to be an adult or a partner. He's petty, vindictive, and probably an alcoholic. He doesn't like you or respect you. You need to save yourself and your child. It's time to plan your exit. Talk to a lawyer and find out what you need to do. Good luck. Now, for the update, thank you for reading. After that awful morning, things got even more complicated. I decided to confront him about his behavior and how it was affecting me and our daughter. He was defensive at first, but then he broke down and admitted that he had been feeling overwhelmed and lost. He said he felt like he was failing as a husband and father, and that drinking was his way of coping. I told him that his drinking was only making things worse and that he needed to get help. He agreed to go back to therapy, but I could tell he was reluctant. The next few days were tense. He was trying to be more present and attentive, but I could see the strain in his eyes. He was still not sleeping well and seemed to be on edge all the time. I was worried that he was going to relapse, and I didn't know how to help him. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, afraid to say or do anything that might set him off. Then, about a week later, he came home with a surprise. He had booked a weekend getaway for us and our daughter. He said he wanted to spend some quality time together and try to reconnect. I was hesitant at first, but I agreed. I thought maybe a change of scenery would do us some good. The trip started off well. We went to a cabin in the mountains and it was beautiful. We spent the first day hiking and exploring the area. Our daughter was having a great time, and for a moment, it felt like things were back to normal. But that night, things took a turn. He had brought a bottle of wine, and I could see the temptation in his eyes. I told him I didn't think it was a good idea, but he insisted that he could handle it. He poured himself a glass, and I could see the tension in his body start to ease. But then he poured another, and another. I could see the old patterns starting to emerge, and I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. The next morning, he was hungover and irritable. He snapped at me over something trivial, and I could see the anger in his eyes. I knew we were in trouble. I tried to talk to him, but he shut me down. He said he was fine and that I was overreacting. I felt helpless and scared. I didn't know what to do. That night, after our daughter was asleep, I confronted him again. I told him that his drinking was tearing us apart, and that he needed to get help. He got angry and defensive, and we had a huge fight. He said he was tired of me nagging him, and that he felt like he couldn't do anything right. I told him that I loved him and that I wanted to help him, but that he needed to take responsibility for his actions. He stormed out of the cabin, and I was left alone, crying. The next morning, he came back and apologized. He said he knew he had a problem and that he wanted to get help. He said he was scared and didn't know how to cope with his feelings. I told him that I was scared too, but that we needed to face this together. We decided to cut the trip short and go back home. When we got back, he made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in addiction. He also joined a support group for people struggling with alcohol. It was a big step, but I could see that he was still struggling. He was trying to be more present and attentive, but I could see the strain in his eyes. He was still not sleeping well and seemed to be on edge all the time. One night after our daughter was asleep, he opened up to me about his past. He told me about his father, who was an alcoholic, and used to beat him and his mother. He said he had always been afraid of becoming like his father, and that he felt like he was failing. I could see the pain in his eyes, and my heart broke for him. I told him that he was not his father, and that he could break the cycle. I told him that I believed in him and that we would get through this together. Over the next few days, I could see a change in him. He was more open and honest with me about his feelings. He was making an effort to be more present and attentive. He was going to therapy and attending his support group meetings. It was a slow process, but I could see that he was trying. Then, one day, he came home with a big smile on his face. He said he had been offered a promotion at work. It was a big opportunity, but it would mean more responsibility and longer hours. I could see the excitement in his eyes, but also the fear. He was worried that the stress would trigger his drinking. I told him that I believed in him and that we would face this together. He accepted the promotion, and I could see a new sense of purpose in him. The next few weeks were challenging. He was working long hours and trying to balance his new responsibilities with his recovery. There were times when he was tempted to drink, but he reached out to his support group and his therapist for help. I could see that he was struggling, but he was also determined to stay sober. One night after our daughter was asleep, he told me that he had been offered a transfer to a different city. It was a big opportunity, but it would mean uprooting our lives and starting over. I could see the fear in his eyes, but also the hope. He said he wanted a fresh start, away from the triggers and temptations of his old life. I was scared, but I also saw this as a chance for us to rebuild our lives together. We decided to take the risk and move. It was a big decision, but I could see that it was the right one. We found a new home and started to settle in. He was doing well at his new job, and I could see a new sense of confidence in him. He was still going to therapy and attending his support group meetings. It was a slow process, but I could see that he was making progress. Thank you for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.